The petrodollar. Is it really over? There have been a number of videos circulating on social media incorrectly assuming that there is some kind of contract between the United States and Saudi Arabia with regard to selling oil in US dollars. The truth is that there was an agreement, not a contract, it's an agreement that was set up in 1974 between Henry Kissinger, who did the deal on behalf of the United States, with Saudi Arabia, trading oil in exchange for military assistance in the Middle East. Right now, we are seeing the rise of the BRICS nations, and there's been a lot of speculation over what will happen to the US dollar. To become a member of BRICS, one thing you have to do is agree to something called de-dollarization. De-dollarization is where a nation decides that it no longer wants to use the US dollar. Why is this happening? Why are nations deciding that the US dollar is not a great investment? The first and biggest reason is because of the way that the United States has treated nations since 1944, when it became the world reserve currency, sanctioning nations and treating nations like second-class citizens by weaponizing the US dollar. It comes as no great surprise that since 2009, the Eastern nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, formed an alliance essentially to say to the United States, we no longer want to use your US dollar because of the way you've weaponized it. The real problem for the success of the BRICS nations right at this moment is the fact that 60% of the world still trades US dollars in reserve, despite the fact that it has an intrinsic value of 2 cents compared to its gold price in 1913, when the Federal Reserve Act was passed on December 23rd of that year. So why do countries still trade US dollars in reserve? The answer is probably due to convenience and ease of use. The euro is the second most widely used currency on the globe in reserve at 20%, compared to the Japanese yen and the British pound, together at about 5%, and the Chinese yuan at about 3%. This is making it difficult for the BRICS group to move to something like yuan, because the fact that the US dollar is still very, very popular amongst many nations. As I said, 60% of US dollars held in reserve. However, the US is clearly rattled by the formation of the BRICS group, because whilst it is only 9 member states at the moment, there are a further 44 nations that are lined up ready to join BRICS, and they are all major commodity nations. Nations such as Nigeria, who is a major oil nation. Nations such as Algeria, which is gas. We have Palestine, we have Pakistan. There are many nations that are very, very keen to join the BRICS group because they are very, very keen to jump on the de-dollarization bandwagon. One of the key players that was meant to join the BRICS group on January the 4th, 2024 actually never joined. There are many people around the world who are a little confused about this. The country I'm talking about is Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is not, and I repeat, is not a member of BRICS. Whilst they've been invited to join the group, they haven't yet taken up their position. And as long as that remains the case, the US dollar will still remain strong. It would be fair to say that there has been some diplomacy between the United States and Saudi Arabia in recent months to ensure that Saudi Arabia never joined the group. So why is Saudi Arabia so important when it comes to de-dollarization? And the reason is because Saudi Arabia is the biggest supplier of land-based oil on the globe, even though they don't have the biggest oil fields. That Guernsey goes to Venezuela, but Venezuela has offshore oil, making it very, very difficult to mine, which means that Saudi Arabia is by far and away the biggest supplier of land-based oil on the globe. Number 3 in the world would be Canada, and number 4 would be Iran. Now, Iran has come under enormous pressure from the United States because, of course, not only are they a major supplier of oil to China, but they also took up their BRICS membership, which I am fairly certain they were told not to do. As a result, not only are they under the threat of war with US warships in the Persian Gulf, but they also have an alliance with Russia, who in turn is a major supplier of oil to China. So as a result of the bilateral agreement between Iran and Russia, They have both suffered sanctions at the hands of the United States. They have also been banned from using the central bank communication system known as SWIFT. As a result, Iran and Russia have been forced to develop their own cross-border payment systems. There is little doubt where this leads from here. Not only have Russia and Iran been forced to develop their own interoperable payment system across border, but they will also begin to develop their own digital currencies independent of the US dollar. There has been a lot of speculation over which currency will drive the BRICS group. Will it be the Chinese renminbi? Will it be the Russian ruble? Will it be the South African rand? The answer is I do not believe it'll be any of those. I believe it'll be a brand new type of cross-border system that will be completely independent of current fiat systems. Something more like the e-ruble, for example. In addition, I do not believe it will be gold-backed. Every gold-backed currency in human history has failed. The gold standard does not work. The reason is because of one simple human trait called greed. In theory, pegging a currency to physical gold is a wonderful idea. As I said, the only problem is humans become very greedy. Gold is very restrictive, which is exactly the point. Gold is anti-inflationary. And of course, the role of central banks is to inflate. There is no point having a central bank if you don't plan to inflate, because when you inflate, you debase currencies and you create debt. Debt is a liability to the common man and an asset to the central bank system. That is how the balance of power works. So to summarise, the petrodollar is here to stay, at least for now. And the reason is because there is no other viable option at this point. The Chinese yuan trades 3% in reserve against the US dollar, which is still trading at 60% in reserve, the euro at 20%, and the Japanese yen and the pound together making up about 5%. Clearly, the US dollar is still the front runner. The big question is, for how much longer is this going to be the case? There is still a secondary world reserve currency which was developed by the International Monetary Fund in 1969, known as the SDR, the Special Drawing Rights Currency, which is a basket of the top 5 currencies of the last 5 years. If that were the case, the current SDR would incorporate the US dollar, the British pound, the Japanese yen, the Chinese renminbi, and of course the euro. These would be the currencies that would make up the basket known as the SDR. The greatest threat to the petrodollar is really Saudi Arabia. If they take up their BRICS membership, they have no choice but to enter into de-dollarization. And if that happens, they're going to need a secondary option. And I do not believe it will be the euro, which is held 20% in reserve. The reason is because there are no European countries that are applying for BRICS right about now. And I believe that if we see Saudi Arabia take its place up at the table at BRICS, we will not only see the virtual and immediate collapse of the petrodollar, we will also see full-scale war, most likely with Iran, and we may even see the collapsing of the clearinghouses and the derivatives markets. Remember that the last time a world reserve currency was selected, the world was at war in 1944. And all of that took place after a 10-year depression in the United States, coinciding with the rise of the Third Reich in Europe. Nobody really knows how we will exactly transition into a new world reserve currency. But one thing we do know is that it is necessary to do so. The other thing we know is that it will come with a world of pain. Every one of us will be affected. Make good choices.